Are prediction markets becoming a new kind of geopolitical intelligence, or are they becoming a high-stakes casino feeding off of global instability? Now, platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi are drawing massive sums on events like the Iran conflict, even as they operate in legal gray zones or outright bans in parts of the world. Users can place bets on future outcomes, like whether or not Jesus Christ will return before 2027. Now, not too many people think that that is likely. They can also predict the outcome of political events like the Iran war. Well-timed bets related to the conflict have prompted calls for investigations from lawmakers in the U.S. The trades have fueled concerns about potential insider trading. They are also raising questions about the growing world of prediction markets and their potential impact on politics and society. Well, my next guest argues that this isn't just about betting, it's about how a gambling mindset is reshaping how we understand truth, risk, and power. Jonathan Cohen is Director of Gambling Policy for the American Institute for Boys and Men, and he's the author of Losing Big, a deep dive into the rise of gambling culture and its consequences. Jonathan, it's good to have you with us. I know you argue that gambling has seeped into everyday life and even beyond. Talk to me about geopolitics, where people today are literally betting on war.
Yeah, it wasn't just a few years ago that gambling was a bit of an oddity and was a bit hard to find. And it's evolved from gambling on sports and, gambling mechanics built into video games to now we have this with the rise of prediction markets, sort of the next natural evolution of it, which is that if you have a platform that lets you bet on real world events and there is a war in the real world, then people are inevitably going to try to use that war, as sick and weird and twisted as it might sound, to make money and as a gambling mechanism.
I'd like to get your thoughts on Polymarket. Its CEO says that Polymarket is a source of truth. Is it actually producing insight, or is it just monetizing uncertainty?
So the thesis, but behind the idea that Polymarket is a source of truth, or in the words of its CEO, a quote, truth machine, is that it is elevating the wisdom of the crowds, is that people, sort of regular people who are willing to invest money behind their opinions, surely know more than a bunch of, no offense, pundits on TV or journalists who are just trying to talk to one source, for example. And that's the idea. But of course, you get into all sorts of questions about, we have lots of evidence recently that the wisdom of the crowds is actually not particularly wise. Not to mention the fact that these platforms do not allow those who have the actual truth, people who with inside information, theoretically, those are the best sources of wisdom and of truth. But of course, technically speaking, on paper at least, those people are not allowed to gamble on the platforms, even though doing so would sort of be the ultimate fulfillment of what prediction markets say they are about.
I want to ask you about new research that I found on your organization's website. It finds that most Americans see prediction markets as more like gambling than investing. I mean, I was surprised by that. Should I not be?
I don't think we should be. I think technically speaking, legally speaking, prediction markets have been able to exist, at least in the United States, because they are legally codified as an investment platform. But in all practical terms, they function like a gambling platform, and even more to the point, the thing that people are actually using prediction markets for, it's not geopolitics, it's not oil prices, it's not Taylor Swift album sales, it's sports. Sports accounts for 80 to 90% of the trading volume on prediction markets in the United States, which is why even putting all these sort of other geopolitical concerns aside, even putting aside differences potentially in how a sportsbook operates versus how a prediction market operates, if we're sort of in the real world, if we're looking with a straight face at the platform, they look and act, and even if they don't talk like a gambling platform, they are one.
And I know that new data shows that young men are the driving force behind increased use of betting platforms. Do we know why is that?
Yeah, this is true both of prediction markets and of online sports betting and other forms of video game betting and the like as well. I think it's a combination of young men being willing to embrace risky behavior, sort of more generally speaking, not sort of helped in the fact by many of them have undeveloped prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that inhibits risk and shapes decision making, but then also a sense of financial precarity. Young men in the United States have lower attainment on the labor market, lower attainment in higher education. So if they have some amount of money in their bank account, $10,000, let's say, I think it's not unreasonable that they would reason that, that I'm never going to be able to pay off my student loan. I'm never going to be able to start a business. I'm never going to be able to start a house, certainly with housing prices as they are. But I can gamble and I have a chance, even if it's a small chance, I have a chance of making $1 million, $10 million, whatever the case may be. So I think it's somewhat understandable why these young men would choose to bet, even if it's not a smart decision for them to do so.
And of course, that assumes that they can actually get access to these platforms and place a bet. I know that users are blocked from predicting events on Polymarket, for example, in certain countries, such as here in Germany. What does that tell us, though? Does it tell us that the regulators are looking at these predicting betting platforms as something dangerous, or does it tell us that the law just has not called up yet?
Yeah, Polymarket is sort of a weird case because with so many of these gambling platforms, it's just ready, fire, aim. Like the platform shows up one day and then the regulators sort of realize what has shown up and then they sort of post facto come in to fix it. Polymarket, because it actually emerged a few years ago and then at least in the United States was sort of kicked out from operating in the United States because of various malfeasances. So we actually have a sort of regulatory platform that is going to have to meet by a couple rules, not enough in my opinion, but it's going to have to meet by a couple rules before it is able to re-arrive in the United States. So I think all indications are that actually Polymarket is on the cusp of sort of more fully re-arriving in the United States, maybe in Germany as well. But at least in this case, lawmakers, I think, or regulators specifically, sort of do have their eye on the set of criteria that prediction markets need to meet. A very, very minimal criteria, just for the record, but the very minimal set of criteria that prediction markets need to meet in order to be able to operate safely, and for both users and for sort of geopolitics and insider trading concerns.
Staying with Polymarket, we say that the platform is blocked in a lot of countries. Maybe you know the answer to this. I mean, how easy is it for people, though, to access Polymarket in countries where the blocking is supposed to be enforced? I mean, I'm just thinking of VPNs, for example. Doesn't that allow them to get around these blockages?
Yeah, I'm not trying to give instructions to your viewers about how to use Polymarket, but yes, anyone who's a little bit tech savvy and who wants to use the platform will certainly be able to find a way to do so.
Yeah, and doesn't it make enforcement almost meaningless? I mean, it risks pushing these platforms even further underground. I mean, could that be the consequence of this?
Yeah, that's true. And that's true actually of gambling writ large. And this is, as difficult as this is sort of the case for legalized gambling is, okay, was this activity going to happen anyway, on an illegal market, let's say? So aren't we better off having it in a regulated market where we can oversee it and where we can produce tax revenue? Candidly, I don't think someone was betting on whether the price of Bitcoin was going to go up in the next 15 minutes on an illegal market. That's only something that Polymarket would even think to offer you. So some amount of this, I do think, was sort of inevitable, and Polymarket is meeting sort of a natural demand for some of this gambling. But a lot of what they're offering is actually creating a new generation of gamblers and getting people hooked on this product in a way that they might not have otherwise engaged with it on the illegal market.
Fascinating. I mean, even if we look at the war with Iran, for example, I mean, there were huge sums wagered on whether or not the U.S. would enter the war. Do you think that bets like this, are they creating information, or are they creating incentives to shape reality?
Well, in the case of the Iran invasion, they certainly were creating new information because someone in the Trump administration, it looks like, or someone somewhere who had inside information, started buying a bunch of contracts the day before the invasion, whether that the United States would invade Iran. So in that case, again, only because of this use of inside information that the companies say they prohibit, it actually was a source of wisdom of the crowds. And that is sort of, to me, the ultimate sort of question lurking behind this thing is do we allow this type of information that actually would make these platforms a source of truth? but they want to be regulated. They want to be legitimate. They want to be sort of publicly available in countries like Germany and the United States. So they have to say on paper that they don't allow these types of bets on their platforms.
Yeah, you just mentioned it. I know you've written about this as well, that gambling is a response to instability. Instability, for example, when it comes to the income for young men. But I'm wondering, these platforms, though, are they feeding off of geopolitical anxiety as well, or do you think they're actually amplifying these anxieties?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Like if there's a 25% chance, last time I checked, that there's going to be a nuclear bomb in the next year, or a 4% chance, according to Polymarket, that Jesus Christ is going to return in 2020, sometime in 2026. Am I supposed to think that if Jesus Christ returns, the first thing I'm going to do is go to my Polymarket wallet and cash out, or am I going to be more likely to think that an apocalyptic event is going to happen because I can log onto a website that now gives me precise odds of a nuclear bomb happening somewhere in the world over the course of the next year? Is that only going to accentuate my nihilism? Is that going to make me even more prone to risky behavior than I otherwise would have been? Because now I can put a direct number. I can really quantify exactly how likely I think the apocalypse is going to be. I can't get in the mind of a 20-year-old, but I can imagine the types of spiraling or the types of thinking that would lead to on their behalf.
And I think on Polymarket right now, the odds of Jesus returning this year are stand right now at 4%, Jonathan. So we'll see what happens between now
pretty good odds.
And December 31st.
I like those odds.
Yeah. Jonathan Cohen, good talking with you. Fascinating discussion. We appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck.